Alright folks, you heard me say it before, this year we didn't make a top 10 games of 2017 list by discussing which games we think are the best. Because ultimately we think that some games deserve to be on the list, but through discussion and stuff we end up cutting them. And at the end of the day we go home and it's kind of a bummer. Now we've already released the videos for everyone's top 10 lists. The only guy that hasn't done it yet, it's me. So let's go. I'm gonna try to do something interesting for this list. Every single game on this top 10 is gonna get an award for being the best at something. And we're gonna start with the number 10, the best horror game. I believe I've played all the big horror games up to date, even though I'm not a big horror game enthusiast and try out every single horror game that came out. This year, I've heard some really good stuff about a few horror games. Outlast 2, The Evil Within 2, Friday the 13th, and Observer. All had their faults, all had their qualities, but my favorite horror game was without a doubt Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 took the franchise in a completely different direction, made it first person, and at the same time it kind of feels like a throwback to the first Resident Evil games. The mansion that you play in is so incredibly smart. It's very well built with locked doors that you find weirdly shaped keys to unlock those doors, and that sort of unlocks a whole new path and a whole new set of puzzles for you to solve. All of it while you're fighting these unique enemies. Some of them you can just shoot them in the head, others you just kind of have to run away from. It's very well paced because there are moments of exploration, of puzzle solving, and then moments of combat and intense escape sequences. And I wish this game was higher on this list, and it could have been if it was good all the way through, but only the first 2/3 of that game are good. Once you leave the mansion, it turns a bit more into an action game, and I don't think Resident Evil 7 is a very good action game, but it definitely delivers as a horror game for sure. At number 9, we have the best surprise of 2017, and we've had some very good surprises this year for sure. I mean, Resident Evil was a great surprise. The series seemed to be dying a little bit. PUBG was also this phenomenon that just came out of nowhere. Very surprising too. Horizon Zero Dawn, I mean, the studio that had been making Killzone games all of a sudden makes an open world, and that open world game is good? My god. And speaking of open world, I mean, The Legend of Zelda got good again, in a way that it hasn't been good for many years. But the best surprises here has gotta be, they made a good Sonic game. Sonic Mania makes it into my number 9, and this is not just a throwback, a classic Sonic, no. These guys have taken the classic levels, remixed them in interesting ways, added some new mechanics and features, and all tied up with this reimagining of the soundtrack too. I liked the Sonic games when I was a kid, but I had gone back to them recently and started to wonder if those games were actually ever any good. Because playing the classics nowadays, I just didn't have a lot of fun. And going into Sonic Mania, I was thinking maybe this style of game is just not meant to be. It just doesn't hold up in 2017. And I was super wrong, and I was so glad to be surprised, because Sonic Mania was definitely a ton of fun to play. It has its twists and turns, its awesome moments. It's got its good levels and its less than good levels, but overall it was definitely a lot of fun. A return to form for this franchise, or at least it would have been if Sonic Forces didn't come out this year as well. Ugh. At number 8, we have the best fighting game. This year I've played Guilty Gear Xrd 2, and that's very good. I played a little bit of Tekken, that's also kind of incredible, but the best fighting game to me was Injustice 2. As far as fighting games go, I was always sort of a Mortal Kombat type of guy, and Injustice 2 is very similar to Mortal Kombat. I mean, it's developed by the same guys, NetherRealm Studios. At the same time, I'm a big fan of the DC Comics universe, so this seems like a match made in heaven for me. The first Injustice was alright, but it wasn't nearly good enough to make it to a top 10. At least not my personal top 10, at least. Injustice 2 has improved on a lot. And the thing that surprised me the most is that, you know, it's got all that fighting game stuff, the online ranked matches, casual matches, leaderboards, lobby systems, everything that you'd want out of a fighting game online system, but they've actually took the time and made it fun for single players as well. That's something that I think more fighting games need to pay attention to, and Injustice 2 might very well be the first game to just nail it. Not only do they have like an incredible story mode, but after you beat that, there's actually a system in there that is fun to play on your own. It's the multiverse system where you unlock new gear and more credits for all of your characters. And because of this system where you can dress these superheroes with custom gear that you earn in these multiverse matches, it is so incredibly addicting. Like, this system is very well built. And because I think Injustice 2 sets a precedent for fighting games that, hey, We can make these games fun for when people are just playing on their own. Fighting games in the future now have to look at Injustice and what it has done and come up with their own unique ways of keeping single players engaged. And that is why I climbed all the way up to my number 8. I mean, the fighting system is also terrific, so the fact that it is a good fighting game also helps a lot. At number 7, we have the game with the best moments. And moments are very spoiler heavy, so in order to not spoil anything, I'm just gonna mention a bunch of games that had really cool moments. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Cuphead, Nier Automata, Horizon Zero Dawn, Sonic Mania, Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle actually has some very cool boss fights, and the list goes on. But if you ask me what were the best moments of 2017, I would point directly towards the Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. Playing that game is alright, it's not the best thing in the world, but if I had an award for best cutscenes, it would go straight to Wolfenstein 2. The stuff that happens during that story, you guys are not ready for it. Trust me, you have to see it to believe it. The things they do with the main character, BJ Blazkowicz, like this icon of video game history. The stuff they do with the Nazi regime, with some of the Nazi characters, is just unbelievable. Like, that game is very serious for the first half, and then it just turns stupid, but in a very good way. And it's hard to talk about it without spoiling, but Wolfenstein 2 definitely has the best moments of 2017. At the number 6, we have the game with the best story. Now, best moments are not necessarily tied to the best story. Wolfenstein 2 has an alright story overall, but we've had other games that had much superior stories overall. Horizon Zero Dawn, once again. Nier Automata with its very weird story. Persona 5, which is almost all about the story exclusively. 100 hours of it, but to me the best story was actually one that was told in about a 3-hour-long game. What Remains of Edith Finch. At first I dismissed this game as just another walking simulator, thinking that, oh, people like this because the story is very good, but I'm usually not engaged with those games enough. Like, even if the story is terrific, just walking around and looking at story is usually not something I'm very much into. This game, however, tells these individual stories, these vignettes about this family. Each person sort of has different gameplay mechanics, so the game keeps changing from a gameplay perspective. It's only 3 hours long, and there are like over 10 different story vignettes, over 10 different gameplay elements, or gameplay styles even. So it keeps things very entertaining and very fresh, because every time you play a new story, you're figuring out what the controls are, what you can do in this new environment. There's this process of discovery that keeps you engaged gameplay-wise, and at the same time you're told this amazing story about this family that seems to have a curse because everyone just dies before they were meant to. And you're sort of reliving these stories from your grandparents and great-grandparents, seeing how their last moments in life were like, all while exploring this house that has been the family house for ages. I finished this game in one sitting, and I told my girlfriend, you need to play this. So the next day we sat down and I watched her play through all of it once again, and I could honestly just play it again because I'm not done with it. It's very incredible. At number 5, we have the best game direction. Now, this is an award that I usually don't pay a lot of attention to during the Game Awards, but this year they gave it to Nier Automata. And yes, Yoko Taro, the game director, has some very weird decisions as far as game direction goes, and it made for a very good video game. But I think there was an obvious winner there that didn't get their due, and that's Guerrilla with Horizon Zero Dawn. I mean, this studio has been making Killzone games for the past decade, and all of a sudden they make an open world game that has nothing to do with their previous games, and they nail it in such a strong way. Like, this is the best sort of traditional open world that I've played to date. And this is a trend that AAA has been chasing for ages now. Like, look at Ubisoft and how many Assassin's Creed games they've made, and how many Far Cry games they've made, or even Warner Brothers with Middle-earth or Mad Max. Like, these game studios have been making open world games for ages. So for this studio that went from linear first-person shooters to a completely open world to make a better game than all these studios that have been making it for ages, that is an accomplishment worthy of recognition. And that is why I think Horizon Zero Dawn has the best game direction. They created a new character with Aloy, and her story is interesting, but I'd say what drew me the most into the world of Horizon Zero Dawn is this bigger than life stuff. Like, what happened to human civilization, and looking at all the ruins of that world and all the tech that came out of it. How did human civilization crumble? How come there are new humans now? Like, those big questions, I think they deliver them pretty well. That was definitely my favorite part about Horizon Zero Dawn. I mean, the gameplay is also great. You use a bow and arrow to hunt robot dinosaurs, and each enemy has all these different parts that you can target. You can remove armor plates to hit their weak spots. You can use different elemental arrows depending on the weakness of each machine that you're fighting. The combat system made me think about switching weapons in a way that I haven't thought about in a very long time. Certainly not in an open world game. So it kept the gameplay fun, and it has like this world lore that is extremely fleshed out. Terrific, terrific experience. Horizon Zero Dawn makes it up to the number 5. At number 4, we have the best weird thing of 2017. You guys remember when Undertale was like this smash hit out of nowhere because of how weird it was? That's the game that kind of inspired me to give this award out, and I'm giving it to Nier Automata because it's the weirdest thing that came out this year. Nier Automata doesn't get good for a while, and that's because the basis for that game is so low budget. It definitely feels like they ran out of money while making that game. The open world is so boring and also very ugly and low budget, and even the combats, like Platinum Games developed it, so you'd expect it to be good, and there's some basic platinum in there, but I found the combat to be very, very tedious. I ended up turning the difficulty down to easy because I just didn't want to engage with the gameplay that much. Because Nier Automata could very easily be the game of the year if they nail that stuff. The way the game is structured, like with the different playthroughs, seriously, the game makes you play until a final boss fight and then starts over and makes you play that stuff all over again with a different character, and somehow they make that interesting. All the different characters that are introduced in this game, they range from weird out there characters to extremely interesting weird ones. Everything's weird in this game. I mean, you have robots having sex in the first few hours of gameplay, and that is just the beginning. I'm not kidding. There's a lot of stuff in this game that you have to see to believe it. But I would say what carries it is the different set pieces that are extremely strange and make you question, why is this happening? The overall story is very, very good. Not only the main story, but also several of the side missions. They also help build this world and these characters. And then just every weird mechanic that game has. Like, you can install upgrades to your character by removing elements of the UI because you don't have enough space to implant a chip that makes you stronger or whatever. The hacking mini games and the way the game plays with that stuff in the end game is incredibly clever. There's so much I want to say about Nier Automata, but most of it would be a spoiler. You have to play it to believe it. It is my number 4 without a doubt. At number 3, we have the best open world game, and we've already talked about a bunch of open world games. I think there's only one left. If you can guess what it is, I'll give you 3 seconds. 2, 1. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, this game just gave me a totally different perspective on open world games. I took a break from playing Horizon when Breath of the Wild came out. When I went back to Horizon, I was looking at the environment a lot more, looking for stuff, instead of just looking at a mini-map and following an icon, because that's the kind of game that Zelda is. The fact that it doesn't hold your hand and lets you scout for interesting stuff out there, and when you find something, you really feel like you found it, you just didn't go there because something was marked on your map. That is a new design that I think a lot of open world games will follow. I wouldn't be surprised if 2 years from now we start seeing games with that exact same mechanic. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild changed the way open world games work, and I think a lot of people are gonna try to emulate that in the future. And for a good reason. I mean, it was incredibly rewarding to just find something in that world. We wanted to explore more of that world precisely because it felt like we were discovering things. We weren't just going through a checklist of stuff to do. And it's got all these beautiful environments. They have a lot of variety to them, the very different styles depending on the region you go to. And again, every little thing that looks interesting, there's some sort of reward there. So the game constantly encourages you to explore more. And while you're going from point A to point B because you saw something in the distance, you see 3 or 4 more things that you want to check out, and you keep just accumulating all of this stuff that you want to see, and you end up getting lost in that world for hours on end. Definitely a top 3 game this year. I know a lot of people are gonna ask, why isn't this number 1? So here's a list of problems that I have with Zelda. The inventory system sucks, weapon durability sucks, I don't like the crafting, I don't like the cooking, even if the cooking jingle is really, really good. And the fact that it is so open-ended and so directionless makes it very hard for me to go back to that game, because every time I turn it on now, I don't know what I was doing, I don't know where I should go, and ultimately that's the number 1 reason why it is so low on the list. Like, it's a very hard game to come back to. Also, the story kind of sucks. It's all the different exploration things that really carry that game. I think the main mission stuff, the dungeons, are kind of boring. After you've done one, you've seen the mechanics, the other ones are just kind of a chore. So yeah, amazing world, not the best main story stuff. And that's why it's number 3, which is not a bad place at all, considering the year that we've had. And number 2, we have the best looking game of 2017, and games have been getting very good looking lately. I mean, from the graphics department, from a technical perspective, Horizon Zero Dawn is gorgeous, Uncharted was impressive as always, Wolfenstein looks great, and then from an artistic point of view, we've also got games like Hollow Knight, Persona 5, and so many more, but no one even comes close to Cuphead. Cuphead is a game that I turned it on and I started playing, and I told to my girlfriend again, stop everything that you're doing, you have to come look at this. It's that kind of game. It's the kind of game that you want to show other people just because of how good it looks. It's the best looking game that I've seen in ages. And I've seen some people saying that, oh, it's just another retro shooter with a beautiful skin. I think you're talking crazy. The run and gun levels are not the best. I really think this game would be better as a boss rush game like it was initially pitched to be. But there's so much to each boss because precisely of the art style and the design. It's impossible to see it all in a single playthrough. And even though it is very arcadey with the shooting style and the gameplay style, I do think it's doing a lot of new stuff as well. One of my favorite things to do in Cuphead was going to a boss, die 4 or 5 times, and then come out and think, okay, what's the loadout that I should bring to this boss fight? And I've seen people beat bosses with loadouts that I would never use because I'm just not comfortable with them. So it gives you that freedom and these different methods for defeating each boss. And then every time you go into a boss fight, you're just mesmerized at what they present to you. It is just incredible, and for those who have only finished that game and only beat each boss once, I think you're doing the game a huge disservice. That thing deserves a second playthrough on the hardest difficulty or something, I don't know. And my number 1 game is gonna be the best platformer. Now, I have a friend of mine who watches this channel that says I have a bias towards platformers, and he doesn't like platformers a lot, so that annoys him. I don't agree with him. I don't think I have a bias towards platformers, but then my number 1 game is Super Mario Odyssey this year. And the number 2 is Cuphead, so I guess he's onto something. If The Legend of Zelda made me play and look at open world games in a different way, Mario made me play and look at video games in a different way, in general. Mario was really what the Switch promised and delivered to be. The game that you play on your TV and play on the go. I did that with Zelda too, but I never really wanted to play on the go. I always wanted to play on the TV, sat down with a Pro Controller. Mario, I just played it anywhere. Mario was the game that changed the way that I play video games, because I was never really a handheld sort of guy. I have a 3DS, I had a Game Boy Color, and those platforms are fine, but if I'm at home, I'd rather sit down in front of a TV and play my PlayStation, my Xbox. And Mario changed that in a big way, where I would just be at home and I wouldn't even plug my Switch into the TV because it was right next to me. It's a game, again, full of great moments. Each world feels so unique and different, and I like the way that the game lets you just advance through the story if you want to, or if you want to spend a lot of time on each world collecting moons, you can also do that. Because at the end, all the worlds are available for you to go back to and you can keep collecting moons, and I'm not able to put that game down until I have everything. It's amazing. I don't remember a game that did this so well. There were a lot of games in the past where I thought to myself, I'm gonna complete this game 100%, but there's always this sort of time period where I'm like, oh, so boring, I gotta collect 3 more of these things. I never felt that with Mario, because each moon you collect is a unique challenge. It's either like something that's hidden in the environment that you have to figure out where it is, or it's like this very linear level, this challenging platformer level that you simply have to beat. And then the new mechanics with Cappy, like you throw your hat and you capture all these different creatures and then you bring them to places they're not supposed to be to complete other puzzles. It's incredibly smart. The whole thing is very, very smartly built. And again, it made it to the number 1 because it changed the way I play video games. I can sit down with Mario and play 5 to 6 hours in one go, or I can just turn it on, play for 5 minutes, get a moon, and I feel like I've done something significant. Super Mario Odyssey is my number 1 game of 2017. There you go, folks. Those are our top 10s. What an amazing year for video games. I think this is the first year that I played every single game that I wanted to play. Every single one. I have no regrets of games that I didn't have time to play or that I kind of missed out on. I think there's only one exception to that rule, and that's Persona 5, because I played that game for 50 hours and then my PlayStation 4 hard drive went kapoof. And I lost my 50-hour save, and then I didn't have time to play another 100 hours, because that's how long that game is. And we can only hope with these lists that we've highlighted the best of this year. We certainly highlighted the games that gave us the best time this year. And with that, I'm very, very happy we didn't have a discussion, because everyone else had Overwatch and PUBG on their list, and it's not making it to my top 10. See, that's why we split off these things. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope everyone has a great new year. Step into 2018 with the right foot, and I'll hopefully still see you guys next year. My name is Globku, and I'll see you guys next time. Boy.